The morning started like any other day across Earth. People woke up, went to work, and lived their normal lives. Nobody knew that everything was about to change forever. In the clear blue sky above the Pacific Ocean, something appeared that had never been seen before. Dark shapes emerged from nowhere, blocking out the sun. The ships were massive, each one larger than a city. Within minutes, similar vessels appeared over every major population center on the planet. Dr. Sophie Grant was working late at her laboratory in Massachusetts when her instruments went crazy. The readings made no sense. She called her colleague across the room and pointed at the screen. Something was generating enormous energy signatures in orbit. Before she could process what she was seeing, her phone started ringing. Everyone was calling at once. The news channel switched to emergency broadcasts. The images showed massive alien ships hovering over New York, London, Tokyo, and dozens of other cities. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison stood on the deck of his naval vessel near Hawaii. He watched the sky darken as three enormous ships positioned themselves overhead. His radio exploded with urgent commands. Every military installation on Earth received the same order: prepare for defensive action. But what could they do against ships that size? Jake had served in the military for 15 years, but nothing prepared him for this moment. He ordered his crew to battle stations, knowing deep inside that their weapons would be useless. The aliens made their intentions clear within the first hour. A broadcast reached every television, radio, and computer on Earth simultaneously. The message was simple and cold. The Crithian Dominion had arrived. Earth now belonged to them. Humanity would serve or die. There would be no negotiation. The message ended with a demonstration of power. A military base in Germany vanished in a flash of blue light. 10,000 people ceased to exist in an instant. The entire base was replaced by a smoking crater half a mile wide. Captain Derek Hayes was in his fighter jet when the order came to engage. He led a squadron of 12 planes toward one of the alien vessels over Nevada. They fired every missile they had. The weapons struck an invisible barrier around the ship and exploded harmlessly. The alien vessel did not even bother to return fire. It simply continued hovering, completely undamaged. Derek watched in horror as similar attacks failed around the world. Tanks, missiles, nuclear submarines, everything humanity possessed bounced off the alien shields like thrown rocks. The governments of Earth tried to respond. Emergency meetings were called. Military leaders planned desperate strategies. But the aliens had already won. Within 6 hours, every satellite was destroyed. Communications networks went dark. Power grids failed across entire continents. The electromagnetic pulses from the alien weapons fried electronics everywhere. Cities went dark. Hospitals lost power. The world descended into chaos. And through it all, the massive ships just waited silently in the sky. By the end of the second day, the aliens began landing ground forces. Smaller ships descended from the massive carriers, thousands of them. They landed in city centers, military bases, and government buildings. The aliens themselves were terrifying to see. They stood 8 feet tall with gray armored skin. Their eyes glowed red. They moved with mechanical precision. They carried weapons that could dissolve a human body in seconds. Humanity tried to fight back. In every city, brave people took up arms. It made no difference. The alien soldiers were too fast, too strong, and too well protected. Ben Carter was a former Marine living in Colorado when the invasion began. He gathered his old service weapons and linked up with other veterans in his area. They organized a defense around their small town. When the alien ships arrived, Ben and 30 others opened fire from prepared positions. Their bullets did nothing. The aliens walked through the ambush without even slowing down. They pointed their weapons and fired. Half of Ben's group died in the first 10 seconds. Ben survived by retreating into the mountains. He watched his town burn from a distance. He swore he would make them pay. The world government surrendered on the third day. They had no choice. The aliens demonstrated their power again by destroying 3 entire cities. Millions of people died. The message was clear: surrender or face extinction. One by one, every nation lowered its flags. The President of the United States gave a speech with tears running down his face. Humanity had lost. The war was over before it truly began. People were ordered to report to collection centers. Anyone who refused would be killed along with their families. Maya Rodriguez was an engineer in Houston. She watched the surrender speech with her family. Her husband held their daughter close. Maya felt rage burning inside her. She had spent years designing systems for spacecraft. She understood technology. She knew that the aliens were not invincible. Their technology was more advanced, but it followed rules. Rules could be learned. Rules could be beaten. She made a decision that night. She would not accept slavery. She would find a way to fight back. The aliens began processing humanity like cattle. Everyone received a neural collar locked around their neck. The collars could not be removed. If anyone tried to take them off, the collar would kill them instantly. If anyone disobeyed orders, the collar would cause terrible pain. The aliens could control millions of people with the push of a button. Families were separated. People were assigned to different work camps based on their skills. The strong went to mines. The educated went to research facilities. Children were taken to breeding centers. The aliens wanted to ensure a steady supply of workers for generations. Jake Morrison ended up in a labor camp in Nevada. His entire crew was dead. His ship was destroyed. He wore the collar like everyone else. He worked 16-hour days moving rubble and digging mines. The aliens barely fed their workers. People died from exhaustion and starvation every day. Their bodies were simply thrown into mass graves. Jake watched good people break under the pressure. He watched hope die in their eyes. But he refused to give up. At night, he talked quietly with other prisoners. He learned that there were others like him. People who still believed they could fight. They just needed time and a plan. Sophie Grant was assigned to a research facility. The aliens wanted humans to help process Earth's resources more efficiently. They did not realize they had made a mistake. Sophie had access to their technology. She could study their computers and weapons. She began taking mental notes of everything she saw. She memorized patterns and systems. She stole small components when the guards were not watching. Late at night, she hid in storage rooms and examined the stolen technology. It would take years, but she was learning their secrets. 5 years passed. Earth became a wasteland. The forests were cut down. The oceans were drained. The sky was gray with pollution from the alien factories. Humanity existed only to serve. But beneath the surface, something was growing. In hidden places, the resistance was forming. Old radio equipment sent coded messages. Small groups made contact. Weapons were hidden. Plans were made. The aliens thought they had conquered humanity. They were wrong. Humanity was only learning to hate. And when humans learn to hate, they become the most dangerous species in the universe. 10 years had passed since the invasion. Earth looked like a dying planet. The oceans were half empty. Mountains had been carved apart for minerals. Entire forests existed only in memories. The human population had dropped from 8 billion to 5 billion. The aliens worked their slaves to death and simply replaced them with new ones. Children born in captivity knew nothing else. The Crithian Dominion had turned Earth into just another resource colony. But they had made a critical mistake. They had given humanity time to learn. Jake Morrison no longer worked in the labor camps. 3 years ago, he had escaped during a transport accident. Since then, he had been living underground with hundreds of other fighters. They had established a base in an abandoned mine system in Nevada. The tunnels stretched for miles, and the aliens had never found them. Jake had become the military leader of the resistance in North America. He was older now, harder, with scars covering his arms and face, but his eyes still burned with determination. Every day, more people found their way to the resistance. Every day, they grew stronger. Sophie Grant worked in the research division of the resistance. She had escaped from the alien facility 2 years ago, taking valuable equipment with her. She had set up a laboratory in a hidden underwater facility near the ruins of San Diego. Her team consisted of 12 scientists, all working on the same goal, understanding alien technology. They had made remarkable progress. Sophie had figured out how the alien shields worked. She had reverse-engineered their weapons. She had learned their computer language. Most importantly, she had found a weakness. The resistance had grown into a worldwide network. Separate cells operated on every continent. Connected by old radio systems the aliens considered too primitive to monitor. Former soldiers, scientists, engineers, and ordinary people who refused to surrender had all joined the fight. They communicated through codes and dead drops. They moved supplies through elaborate tunnel networks. They had learned to hide in plain sight. Some resistance members still wore collars and worked in the camps gathering intelligence. The aliens never suspected that their obedient slaves were actually spies. Colonel Lisa Barnes ran the intelligence network from a base hidden in the Arctic. She had been an Army intelligence officer before the invasion. Now she coordinated information from thousands of sources across the planet. Lisa's network knew where every alien installation was located. They knew supply routes, patrol patterns, and weak points. They intercepted alien communications and decoded their messages. Lisa had built a system that would make any spy agency proud. The aliens had no idea how much the Resistance knew about them. Dr. Nathan Price had made the most important discovery of all. He was a biologist who had been studying the aliens for years. Nathan had managed to capture a sick Krithian soldier and study its biology. He found something remarkable. The aliens had almost no immune system. They had eliminated disease on their homeworld thousands of years ago. Their bodies had no defense against viruses. Nathan had created a modified version of a common Earth virus that would be deadly to them. It would not kill every alien, but it would make them sick and weak. It was the first real weapon that could hurt them. Amy Chen was only 15 when the invasion happened. Now she was 25 and one of the most valuable members of the Resistance. Amy had a gift for understanding computer systems. She had taught herself the alien programming language by watching their technicians work. 3 years ago, she had successfully hacked into an alien communications terminal. Since then, she had been intercepting their messages and accessing their databases. Amy had learned things that terrified her. The Krithians had enslaved over 300 planets. Billions of beings suffered under their rule. Earth was just the latest conquest. Victor Stone led special operations teams that struck directly at alien targets. He was a former Special Forces operator who had survived the initial invasion. Victor's teams conducted raids on alien facilities, stealing weapons and equipment. They sabotaged mining operations. They rescued prisoners. Victor himself had infiltrated an alien military installation by disguising himself as a slave worker. He spent 3 months inside memorizing layouts and procedures. When he escaped, he brought back information that allowed the Resistance to plan much larger operations. The Resistance launched its first major attack on a processing facility in China. Over 200 fighters participated. They had been planning the operation for 6 months. The facility held 20,000 human prisoners who were being prepared for transport off-world. The aliens were selling humans as slaves to other species. The Resistance could not allow that to happen. Jake Morrison led the assault personally. They attacked at night using stolen alien weapons. The guards were caught completely by surprise. The Resistance fighters moved through the facility like shadows, killing every alien they found. Sophie's team had provided special equipment for the raid. They had built devices that could temporarily disrupt the alien shields. The devices only worked for a few seconds, but that was enough. Resistance fighters could fire through the gaps in the shields. The aliens had never faced an enemy that could hurt them before. They panicked and retreated. Within 2 hours, the facility was in human hands. Amy Chen used stolen access codes to unlock all the neural collars. 20,000 people were suddenly free. They were weak and scared, but they were free. The Resistance evacuated as many as possible before alien reinforcements arrived. The alien response was brutal and swift. They chose a city at random and destroyed it completely. 2 million people died in minutes. The aliens broadcast the destruction across every remaining screen on Earth. The message was clear. Any resistance would result in mass punishment. But the aliens had miscalculated. Instead of breaking human spirit, the massacre made people angrier. Thousands more joined the Resistance. The aliens had reminded humanity of what they were fighting for. Every life lost was another reason to never surrender. The Resistance continued operations despite the risks. Victor's team struck at alien supply convoys. Lisa's intelligence network identified high-value targets. Nathan produced more of the bioweapon, though the Resistance was saving it for a larger operation. Maya Rodriguez had joined Sophie's research team and was designing delivery systems for new weapons. She had created a missile that could carry the bioweapon through alien shields. They tested it in secret and it worked perfectly. For the first time, humanity had a weapon that could truly hurt the invaders. Ben Carter was organizing resistance cells in the American West. He had become a legend among the fighters. Stories spread about his raids and escapes. Ben had personally killed over 50 aliens in combat. He had destroyed 3 mining operations and freed hundreds of prisoners. The aliens had put a massive bounty on his head. They wanted him dead more than anyone else. But Ben kept fighting. He moved constantly, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. He trained new fighters and passed on his knowledge. He told them that the aliens could be beaten. He told them to never give up hope. The Resistance captured an alien transport ship in a daring raid near Australia. Victor Stone led the operation. His team had waited for days for the right moment. When the transport landed to take on supplies, they struck. Using the shield disruptors, they disabled the ship's defenses. Then they stormed aboard and killed the crew. The transport was theirs. It was the first intact alien vessel the Resistance had captured. Sophie's team spent weeks studying it. They learned how the engines worked. They learned how to fly it. Most importantly, they learned how to modify it with human weapons. This ship would become the foundation of humanity's future fleet. The Resistance leadership met in secret to discuss their next move. Jake, Sophie, Ben, Lisa, and the other leaders gathered in the Nevada base. They had fought for years just to survive. They had learned the enemy's secrets. They had built weapons. They had trained fighters. Now they faced a choice. They could continue small raids and hope to outlast the aliens, or they could take the fight to the next level. Sophie presented her findings. She had discovered something crucial in the alien databases. The Crithian homeworld was located in a system 300 light-years away. If humanity could strike there, they could end this war. The idea was insane. They had one stolen ship and a few thousand fighters. The aliens had millions of soldiers and thousands of ships. But Jake argued that they had no choice. If they stayed on Earth and kept fighting, eventually the aliens would find and destroy them. Their only chance was to take the offensive. They needed to hurt the Crithians so badly that the entire species would regret ever coming to Earth. The other leaders agreed. It was time to stop hiding. It was time to show the galaxy what humans could do when pushed too far. The Resistance began preparing for the impossible. They would need more ships, more weapons, and more fighters. They would need to unite every Resistance cell on Earth. They would need to free as many people as possible and train them for combat. Most importantly, they would need to strike at the alien occupation forces on Earth and win. Only then could they take the war to the stars. The planning took months. Every detail had to be perfect. There would be no second chance. Sophie's team worked. The attack began exactly at midnight. Across every continent, Resistance cells struck simultaneously at alien installations. Years of planning and preparation came together in one massive coordinated assault. The aliens had grown comfortable in their control of Earth. They had reduced their patrols and pulled back many of their forces. They believed humanity was broken. That was their fatal mistake. On that night, they learned that humans had only been waiting for the right moment. Jake Morrison stood on a hill overlooking an alien command center in Nevada. Behind him waited 300 fighters, all armed with modified alien weapons. They had trained for this moment for months. Jake raised his hand and gave the signal. The attack started with Amy Chen's virus. She had infected the alien computer network weeks ago, and now she activated it remotely. Every screen in the command center went dark. Their shields flickered and failed. Their weapons locked up. The aliens inside suddenly found themselves blind and defenseless. The Resistance fighters poured down the hill like a wave. They had suppressors on their weapons to stay quiet. They moved through the compound, killing every alien they found. The creatures tried to fight back, but their technology had failed them. For the first time, humans had the advantage. Jake led his team to the main building. They planted explosives at key points. Within 10 minutes, the entire facility was secured. Jake set the timer and ordered everyone out. The explosion lit up the night sky and could be seen for miles. One command center down, 50 more to go. Sophie Grant watched the attacks unfold from the underwater base. Screens showed reports from around the world. Every cell was executing their part of the plan perfectly. In Tokyo, Resistance fighters overran an alien research facility. In London, they destroyed a massive slave processing center. In Rio, they captured an alien communications hub intact. Sophie's team had provided the shield disruptors to every cell. The technology worked even better than expected. The aliens had relied on their shields for protection. Without them, they died just like anything else. The most important target was in New York. The aliens had established their main Earth headquarters in what remained of Manhattan. Over 5,000 alien soldiers were stationed there. Victor Stone led the assault with 800 of the best fighters the Resistance had. They approached through the old subway tunnels that ran beneath the city. The tunnels had flooded years ago, but the Resistance had secretly pumped them out and used them as infiltration routes. Victor's teams emerged inside the alien perimeter, bypassing their outer defenses completely. The fighting in New York was brutal. The aliens had better numbers and some backup systems that Amy's virus had not affected, but humans fought with a fury that surprised even themselves. Every resistance fighter had lost someone to the aliens. Family, friends, or their own freedom. They had been slaves for 12 years. All that rage came out in the battle. They used grenades, rockets, and stolen alien weapons. They fought floor by floor through the headquarters building. The aliens tried to call for reinforcements, but their communications were down. They were alone and surrounded. Ben Carter led the Western Front operations from Colorado. His teams hit targets across California, Utah, and Arizona. Ben himself led an assault on a major mining facility that had killed thousands of human workers. The facility was built into the side of a mountain. The aliens had carved out the entire interior. Ben's fighters rappelled down from above while others entered through the mining tunnels. They caught the aliens in a crossfire. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, the facility was destroyed and 200 human prisoners were freed. The Resistance had one more crucial objective. The aliens had several warships in orbit around Earth. These ships could bombard the surface and kill millions. They had to be neutralized. Commander Ryan Foster led this part of the mission. The Resistance had spent the last year secretly building shuttles using stolen technology. They were crude compared to real alien craft, but they could reach orbit. Ryan commanded a force of 200 fighters and 20 shuttles. Their target was the alien flagship orbiting above the Atlantic Ocean. The orbital assault was the riskiest part of the plan. If they failed, the aliens could destroy every Resistance base from space. Ryan's shuttles launched from hidden sites simultaneously. The alien sensors picked them up immediately. But the flagship was already dealing with problems. Amy's virus had infected its systems too. The ship's shields were flickering on and off. Its weapons were firing randomly. The crew was trying desperately to regain control. Ryan's shuttles hit them while they were vulnerable. The space battle was chaotic and deadly. Alien fighter craft launched to intercept the Resistance shuttles. Ryan lost half his force in the first minute, but the survivors pushed through. They flew directly at the massive flagship, dodging defensive fire. Several shuttles crashed into the ship's hull and detonated. The explosions tore through the armor. Other shuttles landed and deployed fighters who cut their way inside. Maya Rodriguez had designed special cutting torches that could slice through alien metal. The Resistance fighters poured into the ship and started destroying everything they could reach. Inside the flagship, the fighting was desperate. The aliens had no room to maneuver in the narrow corridors. The Resistance fighters used that to their advantage. They tossed grenades around corners and fired blindly through doorways. They showed no mercy. Every alien they encountered died. Ryan led his team to the engineering section and planted nuclear devices throughout the massive room. The bombs were crude but effective. Ryan and his survivors fought their way back to their shuttles and launched. Behind them, the flagship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The debris rained down into the atmosphere like shooting stars. Back on the surface, the battle for Earth continued. By dawn, the Resistance had destroyed or captured over 60 alien installations. Thousands of aliens were dead. Millions of humans were freed when Amy shut down the neural collar network. The collars fell off and people could finally remove them safely. 12 years of slavery ended in a single night. In the camps and cities, people looked at the sky and saw the burning wreckage of the alien flagship. They realized what had happened. Humanity was fighting back. Hope returned for the first time in over a decade. The aliens tried to regroup. Reinforcements came from other facilities. But the Resistance was ready for them. They had captured alien weapons and vehicles. They knew the terrain better than the invaders. In city after city, humans ambushed alien patrols. They destroyed convoys. They hit communication towers. The aliens found themselves fighting on 100 different fronts simultaneously. They had never faced an enemy like this before. The species they had enslaved across the galaxy had surrendered or been crushed. But humans refused to stop fighting. Lisa Barnes coordinated the intelligence war. Her network intercepted alien distress calls and tracked their movements. She fed information to Jake, Ben, Victor, and the other field commanders. The Resistance knew where the aliens were regrouping. They knew which facilities were still active. Lisa's team also discovered something important in the alien communications. The Crithians were panicking. They had sent urgent messages back to their homeworld asking for reinforcements. But those reinforcements would take months to arrive. Until then, the aliens on Earth were on their own. Sophie's research team worked around the clock analyzing captured alien technology. They found star charts showing the locations of other enslaved worlds. They found communications revealing the full extent of the Crethean Empire. Over 300 planets were under their control. Trillions of beings suffered as slaves. Earth was just one small part of a vast evil empire. But Earth was the first planet to successfully fight back in over a century. Sophie realized that humanity had a responsibility now. They could not just free themselves and hide. They needed to end the Crethean dominion completely. The battle for Earth lasted 3 more weeks. The resistance pushed the aliens back systematically. Every victory brought more people to their side. Humans who had given up hope now picked up weapons and joined the fight. Former soldiers, factory workers, farmers, teachers, everyone contributed. The resistance grew from thousands to millions. The aliens controlled less territory every day. Their supply lines were cut. Their reinforcements were destroyed before they could reach the fighting. The Cretheans had been masters of Earth. Now they were just trying to survive. The final alien stronghold was in Australia. The aliens had concentrated their remaining forces there, hoping to hold out until reinforcements arrived. Jake Morrison led an army of 50,000 fighters to finish the job. They surrounded the alien position completely. Victor's special forces teams infiltrated and destroyed the alien defenses from within. Nathan Price deployed the bioweapon through the air circulation system. The virus spread through the alien ranks, weakening them. When the final assault came, the aliens barely resisted. They were sick, demoralized, and outnumbered. They surrendered within hours. Earth was free. After 12 years of slavery, humanity had won. People celebrated in the streets of every city. They tore down alien structures and monuments. They reclaimed their world. But the victory was... The Terran Liberation Fleet launched from Earth 5 months after the planet's liberation. Humanity had worked day and night to build a proper war fleet. They reverse-engineered alien technology and combined it with human innovation. The result was a fleet of 500 warships, each one crewed by people who had survived slavery and were determined to prevent it from happening to anyone else. Admiral Craig Sullivan commanded the fleet from the Bridge of the Retribution, a massive battleship built from the salvaged alien flagship. The fleet's mission was simple: find the Crethean colonies, free the slaves, and destroy the infrastructure that supported the Empire. The fleet's first target was a mining colony in the Outer Rim called Helios Station. Intelligence from captured alien databases showed that the station held slaves from multiple species. The Cretheans used it as a major supply hub for their empire. Admiral Sullivan ordered the fleet to jump through the alien Stargate network. The journey took 3 days. When they emerged in the Helios system, they found exactly what they expected: a heavily defended station orbiting a dead world, surrounded by patrol ships and automated defenses. The aliens detected the human fleet immediately and scrambled their forces. The battle began badly for humanity. The alien defenses were stronger than anticipated. Several human ships took heavy damage in the opening minutes, but the Cretheans had never fought humans before. They expected a standard battle with predictable tactics. Instead, Admiral Sullivan ordered his ships to split into small groups and attack from multiple angles simultaneously. Human pilots flew in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully coordinated. They confused the alien targeting systems and broke through the defensive perimeter. Major Diane Cooper led the ground assault. She commanded a unit called the Reapers, consisting of 500 elite fighters trained for shipboarding and urban combat. Diane had lost her entire family to the aliens during the initial invasion of Earth. She fought with controlled fury that made her legendary among the troops. Her Reapers launched from assault shuttles and attached to the station's hull. They cut through the armor and poured inside. The aliens tried to repel them, but discovered that humans in close combat were terrifyingly effective. Within 2 hours, the Reapers had secured the station. Inside Helios Station, humanity encountered other enslaved species for the first time. They found crystalline beings called the Azari, aquatic creatures called the Thalren, and insectoid warriors called the Vex. All 3 species had been conquered by the Cretheans generations ago. They wore the same neural collars humans had worn. They worked in the same terrible conditions. When Amy Chen's team disabled the collars, the freed aliens did not know how to react. Some thought it was a trick. Others believed they were being transferred to different masters. They could not imagine that anyone would actually fight to free slaves. Dr. Alex Turner served as the fleet's strategic advisor. He had spent years studying alien cultures from captured databases. Alex explained to the freed aliens that humanity wanted nothing from them except alliance against a common enemy. The Azari, Thalrin, and Vex were skeptical at first. They had suffered under Krithian rule for so long that they no longer believed freedom was possible. But when they saw humans destroying the alien infrastructure and helping rebuild their communities, they began to believe. The freed slaves shared information about other Krithian facilities and weak points in their defenses. An alliance began to form. The Liberation Fleet struck at target after target across the Outer Rim. They freed a prison world holding 10 million slaves. They destroyed a weapons manufacturing facility. They captured supply convoys and turned the ships over to freed aliens who wanted to fight. Word spread through the underground networks that existed on every enslaved world. A species from a planet called Earth was fighting the Krithians and winning. Hope spread like wildfire through the slave populations. Resistance movements that had been dormant for decades suddenly came back to life. Marcus Webb ran the fleet's intelligence division. He interrogated captured Krithian soldiers and analyzed their communications. Marcus discovered something crucial. The Krithian Empire was larger than humanity had realized. They controlled systems across 3 sectors of the galaxy. But the Empire was also weaker than it appeared. The Krithians relied on fear and overwhelming force. They had never developed real defensive strategies because no one had seriously challenged them in centuries. Their facilities were poorly defended. Their supply lines were vulnerable. Marcus presented his findings to Admiral Sullivan. The fleet could do serious damage if they moved fast and struck hard. The campaign continued for 3 years. The Liberation Fleet grew as freed aliens joined the cause. Azari scientists improved human weapons. Thalrin navigators found secret routes through dangerous space. Vex warriors proved to be even more fearsome fighters than humans. Together they formed a coalition united by one goal: ending Krithian tyranny forever. They gave themselves a name. They called themselves the Alliance of Free Worlds. Every liberated planet sent ships and volunteers. Every victory brought more allies. Jake Morrison joined the fleet in its 2nd year. He had spent the previous months organizing the defense of Earth and training new soldiers, but he could not stay behind while others fought. Jake took command of a battle group and led raids on Krithian outposts. He developed new tactics specifically designed to counter alien strategies. His battle group became known for appearing where the enemy least expected and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. The aliens started calling him the Ghost Commander. They feared him more than anyone else in the Alliance fleet. Ben Carter remained on Earth, coordinating recruitment and training. Millions of humans volunteered to join the Liberation Fleet. Ben made sure they were properly trained before sending them into battle. He also organized the defense fleet that protected Earth and other liberated worlds. Ben knew that the Krithians would eventually launch a counterattack. When they did, Earth needed to be ready. He built defense stations, trained fighter squadrons, and established early warning systems. Earth would never be caught unprepared again. The Alliance pushed deeper into Krithian space. They liberated major colony worlds and destroyed military installations. But victory came at a terrible cost. The Krithians deployed weapons of incredible destructive power. They used planet-killer bombs on worlds they could not hold. They poisoned atmospheres and destroyed entire ecosystems. They were willing to kill billions rather than let them be freed. The Alliance fleet arrived at system after system only to find dead worlds floating in space. The Krithians had killed their own slaves rather than lose them. A major battle occurred at the Cygnus Relay, a strategic junction point in the Stargate network. The Krithians assembled their largest fleet there, determined to stop the Alliance advance. Over 3,000 ships on each side, engaged in the biggest space battle in galactic history. The fighting lasted for 6 days. The Alliance lost 200 ships, including several capital vessels. Admiral Sullivan's flagship was heavily damaged, but the Alliance adapted their tactics in real time and eventually broke through the Krithian lines. The enemy fleet retreated in disorder. The way to the core systems was open. Sophie Grant made a breakthrough back on Earth. She had been studying Krithian biology and technology for years. Sophie discovered that the aliens had a critical weakness in their ship power systems. If the reactors were hit in a specific way, they would overload and destroy the entire vessel. She developed a new type of torpedo that could exploit this weakness. Maya Rodriguez designed the delivery system. The quantum disruption torpedoes could phase through shields and strike directly at ship cores. Sophie sent the designs to the fleet. Admiral Sullivan ordered every ship refitted with the new weapons immediately. The fleet tested the new torpedoes in a raid on a Crithian shipyard. The results exceeded expectations. A single torpedo could destroy ships that would normally take sustained fire from multiple vessels. The Crithians had no defense against the quantum torpedoes. Their technological advantage was rapidly disappearing. The aliens began avoiding direct combat, retreating deeper into their territory. But they could not retreat forever. The Alliance was pushing toward the Crithian home systems. The war was approaching its endgame. Intelligence from Marcus Webb's division revealed the location of Crithios Prime, the Crithian homeworld. It was located in a heavily defended system at the center of their empire. 6 planets in the system housed the core Crithian population. Over 100 billion aliens lived there. It was the heart of their civilization. Admiral Sullivan called a meeting of all Alliance leaders. They faced a crucial decision. They could continue liberating outer colonies and slowly strangle the Empire. Or they could strike directly at the home system and end the war in one massive assault. The debate was intense. Some argued that attacking the homeworld was too risky. The defenses would be massive. Casualties would be enormous. Others argued that every day they delayed, more slaves died in Crithian camps. The longer the war continued, the more worlds would be destroyed. A direct assault on the home system would be costly, but it would end the war quickly. After 3 days of discussion, the Alliance fleet emerged from the Stargate at the edge of the Crithios system. What they saw made even the most experienced commanders pause. The Crithian homeworld was surrounded by a defensive network that defied imagination. Thousands of defense platforms floated in orbit. Massive battle stations commanded every approach vector. The Crithian home fleet numbered over 5,000 warships. This was the full military might of an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds over thousands of years. Admiral Sullivan looked at the display and realized that many of the ships around him would not survive the next few hours. Captain Nicole Hart commanded the Vanguard fleet alongside Jake Morrison. She was a brilliant tactical officer who had fought in every major battle since Earth's liberation. Nicole had designed much of the assault plan herself. Her strategy was simple but brutal. The Vanguard would punch through the outer defenses at maximum speed, absorbing as much enemy fire as possible. This would create a hole in the defensive network for the main fleet to exploit. It meant the Vanguard ships would take devastating damage, but there was no other way to break through defenses this strong. The battle began with the Vanguard fleet's charge. Jake and Nicole led 400 ships directly at the heaviest concentration of enemy forces. The Crithians opened fire with everything they had. Space lit up with weapons fire. The first wave of defensive fire destroyed 50 Alliance ships in seconds. But the survivors kept coming. They fired the quantum disruption torpedoes as they advanced. Crithian warships exploded as the torpedoes overloaded their reactors. Defense platforms were torn apart. The Vanguard fleet was taking terrible losses, but they were carving a path through the defenses. Lieutenant Chris Wade was a young tactical officer on the Retribution. He had developed the coordination software that allowed the fleet to operate as one unified force. Chris watched the battle displays and made split-second adjustments to the fleet's formation. When a gap opened in the Crithian lines, he spotted it immediately and redirected forces to exploit it. When enemy reinforcements moved to close the breach, Chris predicted their route and positioned ships to intercept. His tactical genius was the invisible force multiplying the effectiveness of every Alliance ship. The Crithian home fleet counterattacked with massive force. Their capital ships were larger and more powerful than anything the Alliance possessed. They formed a wall of steel and energy trying to plug the gap the Vanguard had opened. For a moment, it looked like the assault would fail. Then Maya Rodriguez's experimental weapons proved their worth. The Alliance had equipped several ships with mass driver cannons that fired projectiles at relativistic speeds. These simple kinetic weapons bypassed shields entirely. The projectiles hit Crithian capital ships like hammers, punching clean through their armor. The alien formation broke apart. Jake Morrison's flagship took a direct hit that destroyed half the ship. Emergency systems failed. The bridge filled with smoke. Jake ordered all survivors to abandon ship, but he stayed at his post coordinating the Vanguard fleet. Another explosion rocked the ship. Jake was thrown against a bulkhead and felt something break, but he could still see the tactical display. The Vanguard had accomplished their mission. The path was open. Jake transmitted his final orders to Nicole Hart, then evacuated with the last survivors just before his ship exploded. He was rescued by a passing destroyer and continued commanding from its bridge. The main Alliance fleet poured through the gap. Admiral Sullivan led them straight toward Crithios Prime. The planet loomed ahead, a blue and green world that billions called home. The Crithians threw everything they had at the invaders. Wave after wave of defenders attacked. The battle spread across the entire system. Ships fought in desperate close-range combat. Debris from destroyed vessels created hazards that claimed even more ships. The Alliance was winning, but the cost was staggering. Over half the Vanguard fleet was gone. The main fleet was losing ships every minute. Diane Cooper prepared her Reapers for the ground assault. They would drop directly onto Crithios Prime and capture key facilities. The Reapers had grown into a force of 10,000 elite soldiers. They launched in assault pods that burned through the atmosphere like meteors. The Crithians tried to shoot them down, but too many pods were coming too fast. Diane's pod crashed into the capital city, and the Reapers deployed into a hostile urban environment. The fighting was immediate and brutal. Crithian soldiers defended their homeworld with desperate courage. The Alliance had a secret weapon they had not yet deployed. Dr. Helen Gray had developed a biological agent specifically designed to target Crithian genetics. It was a virus far more potent than the one Nathan Price had created years ago. This weapon could potentially wipe out the entire Crithian species. Helen had presented it to the Alliance Council before the battle. The debate that followed was one of the most important in human history. Did they have the right to commit genocide, even against an enemy that had enslaved billions? Or was total extermination justified as the only way to prevent future suffering? Sophie Grant argued strongly against using the ultimate bioweapon. She reminded the Council that they had fought to end tyranny, not become tyrants themselves. Humanity had suffered terribly, but that did not give them the right to exterminate an entire species. Jake Morrison argued the opposite. The Crithians had shown no mercy to anyone. They had destroyed entire worlds rather than let them be free. If humanity showed mercy now, the Crithians would rebuild and attack again. Only complete destruction would ensure safety for the galaxy. Amy Chen, now 35 and a senior commander, offered a middle perspective. She argued that the weapon should exist as a deterrent, but only be used if the Crithians refused to surrender completely. The galaxy needed to know that humanity could destroy them, but humanity also needed to prove they were different from the empire they fought. After days of debate, the Council voted narrowly to follow Amy's suggestion. The bioweapon would be prepared but held in reserve. The Crithians would get one chance to surrender. The battle for Crithios Prime raged for 2 weeks. The Alliance fleet systematically destroyed every military installation in the system. Diane's Reapers captured the planetary defense grid and shut it down. Alliance forces landed on all 6 inhabited planets in the system. The fighting was savage. The Crithians knew they were defending their entire civilization, but they were losing. The Alliance had too many ships, too many soldiers, and weapons the aliens could not counter. The quantum torpedoes turned the tide of every engagement. Crithian warships died by the hundreds. The Crithian High Council sent a message requesting negotiations. Admiral Sullivan refused to talk while Crithian forces continued fighting. The Council then ordered all military units to stand down. A ceasefire spread across the system. For the first time in weeks, the guns fell silent. Sullivan transmitted humanity's terms. Complete dismantling of the Crithian military. Immediate release of all slaves across the Empire. War crime trials for the leadership. Reparations to every enslaved world. And permanent monitors to ensure the Crithians never rebuilt their empire. The terms were harsh, but after what the Crithians had done, they were fair. The High Council rejected the terms. They claimed that the Crithian people would never accept such humiliation. They said they would rather fight to extinction than surrender completely. Admiral Sullivan gave them 1 hour to reconsider. The Council refused again. They ordered their remaining forces to resume combat. Sullivan had no choice. He authorized the deployment of Helen Gray's bioweapon. The virus was loaded into missiles and prepared for launch. It would end the war in the most terrible way imaginable. Sophie Grant made one final plea. She contacted the Crithian High Council directly. She told them about the bioweapon. She explained that humanity had the power to exterminate their species completely. She begged them to think about the millions of young Crethians who had never chosen to be part of the Empire. She asked them if pride was worth the death of their entire civilization. The council members argued among themselves. Some refused to believe the weapon existed. Others believed but insisted they could not surrender. The hour passed with no answer. Ben Carter was observing the battle from Earth. He sent a message to Admiral Sullivan that was broadcast to the entire Alliance fleet. Ben reminded them why they had fought. They had fought to end slavery. They had fought to protect the innocent. They had fought to prove that freedom was worth any sacrifice. But they had not fought to become the same monsters they opposed. If they used the bioweapon and killed billions of civilians, how were they different from the empire they had destroyed? Sometimes the hardest choice was showing mercy when revenge felt justified. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Retribution, facing the most important decision of his life. Around him, his officers waited for orders. Outside, the entire Alliance fleet waited for his signal. On Crithios Prime, billions of aliens waited to learn if they would live or die. Sullivan thought about Earth burning. He thought about the 3 billion humans who died during the occupation. He thought about every slave who suffered in Crithian camps. Then he thought about who humanity wanted to be after the war ended. Sullivan ordered the weapons held. He transmitted another message to